You're listening to the Elephant in the Room podcast, brought to you by Visory, where we talk about what's ahead in tech now and around the corner. Each week, we interview guests on the leading edge of technology advancements and delve into the intersection of where people and technology merge. I'm Carrie Pena, and this is Adopt Technology's Elephant in the Room podcast, powered by Visory. Our guest today, Felicia Shakiba, joining us from Los Angeles. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Felicia is the founder of CPO Playbook, a global leadership and consulting firm. She is also the host of the CPO Playbook podcast, a show that aims to solve business problems in every single episode. Tell us a little bit more about your company.
Yeah, so I would say that I could sum it up in a couple different pieces of challenges that we really look to solve. So the first one is your HR technology and your tech stack for every organization. A lot of organizations find it challenging to select and implement HR technology. There's probably more than about 400 plus vendors. And so we do a really deep dive into what HR technology looks like for your company and really match it with the strategy that the company needs in order to be successful and scale. So that's one big portion. The other challenge that we solve really well is talent optimization. So that's really considered by any type of talent process, whether it be succession planning or learning and development and upgrading your manager's knowledge. How do you keep track of that? How do you analyze that? Anything around leveling up the skills that you have in your organization and ensuring those skills match the future skills that you need as an organization, how organization is designed. That's all talent optimization that helps us help organizations perform at their best. So they're pretty deep challenges, but we do them really well.
Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you come into this?
So I have, just as a foundation, I have an industrial organizational psychology master's. And from my education, I actually fell in love with statistics and people analytics. And so when I went into like the working world from school, I loved understanding and learning about people. I think they're extremely complex. No two people are the same, even identical twins. So I think it's just a wonderful, beautiful challenge on a daily basis to figure out like, how do we get all of these people, whether it be 100-person company or 1,000-person company or 100,000 people, come together and actually get on board with one mission and kind of orchestrate an organization of people who have all of these different characteristics to move in one direction all at the same time with different functions. So I just think it's such an amazing opportunity to be in this position and in this role. But from my career, I actually started my own HR tech startup, which is what got me so excited about technology. So that was years ago. And I learned so much about the industry and the world and actually how to build my own HR technology that I very soon became an expert in the field of understanding and learning because I've always been doing that. And then finally, the latest, roles that I have prior to my being the founder of CPO was I actually was the head of talent management for a Samsung company. I've always worked in global roles. So I had the amazing opportunity to work with people all over the world. And then I also did, I was also specialized in performance. So I was the head of performance management for a company called WPP. They're a 100,000 person company. But what was really interesting that I did in that role was I didn't just only identify the strategy for their corporate office around performance, but was also internally consulting for 13 or 14 of their subsidiaries around performance. So if you could only imagine the stakeholders and the complexity that brought to the table, it was just so much fun. And I realized very early on that, these are the things that I love doing. And I just had a taste of it inside. And I said, I'm going to do this for a long time.
So you have a really short resume, I see.
Yeah, right. I know. I talked about it probably too much, but
no, I love it. It's so fascinating. And I love that you're following your passion and you're continuing to, level up with knowledge. What do you think is the biggest shift right now in terms of how people are approaching, leaders are approaching, advancing their companies more with people in mind?
It's a big question. I think firstly, great leadership, as far as what I've seen, have really doubled down on their values and then been able to bring those values to life. It's very, very difficult to run an organization where a leader says one thing and then behaves differently. I think any type of successful leader is able to not just understand and communicate the values to the business and what the mission and the vision is, but also be able to enforce those behaviors, not just for their people, but for themselves and especially the rest of the executive team. It's very difficult to make change. I'm like, if I were to go into a business and try and get all their employees to really stand by, for example, a value like innovation, I could do everything in my power. But without the CEO or the rest of the executive team actually behaving in a way that's innovative or that defines that value, it's probably not going to be a very successful implementation or change in behavior. So I think as far as what leaders would do or can do to really focus on people nowadays is dive deep, understand what those values are, and then create an employee experience around those values and implementing those things on a daily basis.
In your expertise, which you have a lot of, how do you see this helping to boost employee morale?
Yeah, I think that morale comes not just from where the business is going or how it's performing, but also the transparency that leaders bring to the table. So I've seen leaders go to an all hands meeting and talk about all the great things that they're doing. But at the end of the day, everybody in all different parts of the business, they really kind of know what's going on because they're the one building the business. And so that trust kind of gets broken if a leader is not being transparent about the other challenges that are going on. I think that morale is boosted when they feel the trust is strong with leadership and their ability to be engaged and solve problems with leadership in the business. That's kind of what I think empowers people, even during a restructure. Morale is the lowest during a restructure, or other words, a layoff. And it's very difficult to kind of help the company bounce back. In one of my most recent episodes, we had a gentleman talking about restructuring and the art and respect and empathy that goes along with doing it in a way that respects employees and allows them to feel confident on their way out, or whether there's changes in the business or whether they stay in the business and their friends have left. It's really challenging to turn the morale around that way. But what he talks about is the fact that if a leader is able to communicate, hey, these are both the logical reasons why we're doing it from a business perspective, and here are the emotional or social emotional reasons why we're doing it this way, or the impact that we're going to have, or these are the choices that we've made and this is why. Being able to kind of say, here's how you can come along with the journey of being able to support this business moving forward. That transparency, that communication is all extremely important in order to not just sustain the morale and the people who have stayed in the business, but also allow employees to leave with a sense of dignity and respect and optimism, if that makes sense.
Why do you care so much about the people part of this equation?
Well, I think that, at least in my view, this is the reason why we build businesses. It's for our customers. It's to create jobs. It's to create a lifestyle that people want to live in. Organizations are communities, essentially. It's a way of life. It's a way of living. A long time ago, I had a choice of what kind of psychology I wanted to specialize in. And I selected industrial organizational psychology because of this particular reason. It was the fact that if most of our waking lives are at work, and a shift in the leader is the shift in an organization. An organization could have up to, hundreds and thousands of employees. And if I wanted to make the biggest impact on people's lives, where were the most people? Where were their lives mostly being experienced, and what kind of environment, and who had the greatest responsibility? And those are leaders. Those are executives that are responsible, at least from a working perspective, of all of their employees' lives. And so I just thought, if I wanted to really make a difference in the world, that's where I would start, like, just logically speaking. And I don't think it's just from like a work perspective. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that what's going on at home impacts work, and what's going on at work impacts home. And so at the end of the day, this is my logic and why I felt like this was a career for me, and what I wanted to do, and how I wanted to, contribute to the world and give back. And I am very passionate about it. But I enjoy it. And I feel like when I see someone or a team's experience at work improving, I just think I've improved people's lives, not just at work, right?
I think that's really powerful. I do a lot of reporting in the mental health space, and obviously, we are dealing with a mental health crisis. It is incredible when you compare someone who has a day-to-day job, no matter what that is, whether it's something, high paying or someone's working their way up. But if they feel joy and contentment, if they are seen and heard, it is amazing the impact that has on your mental health.
Absolutely. There's actually an amazing episode by she's the chief people officer at BuzzFeed. And she's just an amazing person who I interviewed on the CPO Playbook podcast. And she talks about how do you create an amazing employee experience. And one of the things that I really learned from her was just the fact that there's so much that goes into an employee experience. It's not just how you feel about the company. It's, how do you connect with people across the function? What do those benefits look like, and how do they match what the employees need? What is the, learning experience? It's this, like I said, this orchestra of how things come together. It's not just one piece. And so that's really what creates that experience. And being seen, feeling heard is one of the most memorable experiences I think an employee could have, even if it's just for a few moments, especially by an executive leadership team, not just your manager, but also even cross-functionally. I know that in my world and in my experience, some of the best relationships I've had are actually people from outside of the United States who I've worked with, on a weekly or monthly basis. And we're learning from each other, and we're growing together. And it's that ability to not just build relationships within your team, but also outside of your team and from different levels. And when I think that the organizations that I see that are extremely successful, who have a wonderful employee experience, really know how to marry that cross-functional, those cross-functional relationships, regardless of where they're at in the world, and be able to say, how does the engineering team build a product that matches what the marketing team really needs to talk about? What does the marketing team need or what does the sales team need from marketing? This ability to work together with multiple different skill sets and build teams that way is also really important. And that is actually what gets people really excited, because they're learning all the time. They're not just learning directly into their function, but around each other. And that I also believe is a way for people in the business to feel seen and feel heard, because they're not just talking to people who know about their function. They're talking to people who want to learn about their function from others.
And we're having this conversation today about building a stronger, healthier company culture. How would you say that you make within the company culture, if leaders are listening to this, how would you make empathy more than just a buzzword?
Yeah. So empathy is one of the competencies that I would say are really more critical as you move up the organization, but by no means less important, at the very early leveling of an organization. But what I would say is that if you're going to say that empathy is a value, then you need to look at your processes and programs to help identify how do you support or bring empathy into the conversation. For example, if we are talking about performance reviews or we're going through performance training and we're talking to managers about, hey, here is how you have a one-on-one conversation during performance conversations. One of those slides or topics should be about empathy. It should be about, what does empathy look like? What can you say to someone? What does empathy look like when you have a low performer? And does it make sense to just tell them what they're doing wrong? Or are you actually going to help ask productive, proactive questions that help you understand that person's view or experience so you can learn about how you can be the best, most supportive manager during this process, and so forth. It's not just about implementing it into like a training. It's also about how you hire. So if you want to hire somebody, and empathy is a value that every single person coming into your business should have, you better have structured interview questions that ask questions about experiences where somebody has felt or provided or learned from the need to have empathy in every type of conversations they have, or particular conversations, whatever that question looks like. So when it comes to company culture, it's really about understanding what the values are, what is the definition, what are those behaviors, what does it look like in the business, and then how do we want to reinforce those behaviors through the processes and programs that we have from an employee experience perspective.
I'm curious, as you were coming up, and especially since you've worked in the world of tech as a woman, did you have any negative experiences that helped you identify, this is absolutely what I want to work against?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I think, one statistic that I like to share, because I am just so shocked at it every time I say it, but the time that I was raising money for my startup, I was like only 1% of female founders like got funding. It's just like a crazy statistic. And I think now it's 2%. I'm not sure, don't quote me, but it's just, it's an uphill battle for sure. And it's a challenge, and I love challenges, but to kind of answer your question and think about, well, this is what I don't or I wouldn't want to do. I think that being an inclusive leader is one of the smartest strategic ways of being a successful leader you can be. And the reason for that is that if you think about what diversity, equity, and inclusion stand for and what that looks like, there is evidence that shows that the companies who make the best decisions are those who listen to multiple perspectives, especially the ones that aren't theirs, and gain insight in order to make better decisions. I mean, if you think about a leader who brings in, people of the same race, the same age, or the same experiences, or from the same school into a team, you're only getting a very narrow, myopic view of what should be or what could be. And unfortunately, that doesn't resonate with all of your potential customers or the types of different products that you could make, to satisfy the needs of the challenges that you really are never going to know about, because you aren't bringing those different leaders and with different backgrounds, different education, different age, different genders into the room. And so leaders are really doing themselves a disservice by not doing that. And it's not about having great ideas. It's not about that, because people could bring in terrible ideas, but it's about stretching your mindset in order to look and think and be available to different perspectives where you can eventually come up with the best decision. Even the first decision that you have could be the best, but unless you compare it and do the research and bring all of those perspectives into the room, you're not going to know if it's the best decision or not, if that makes sense. So I think just from my journey and my experiences, I never want to be the leader that shuts out even bad ideas, right? And I also don't want to lead people on into thinking that they're going to be promoted, or they're going to get funding, or they're going to, have something follow through. I think it's really important to be honest and transparent, and not, have the carrot and the stick. And with that, I mean, making sure that when people come to the table, it's not about, I want to hear your ideas, because your idea is the most important idea. It's about, I want to hear everyone's idea. I want to do my due diligence and get everybody, to have a voice in the room. And then we'll come together and, make a great decision together.
What was it that inspired you to keep going, even though you had significant obstacles? As you cited the statistics, you had a vision, but I'm sure that was not easy to get where you wanted to go. What inspired you to keep going?
I saw the future of what I was doing, in the sense of what I was building, I knew was going to make a difference. It was going to impact people's lives. It was going to change the way people worked. It's funny. It's so funny that you asked that question, because the original idea that I had back in 2015 was probably too early. Honestly, it was about the ability to identify values and skill sets and kind of hashtag them into bite-sized stories, kind of like an Instagram within the organization. So if you looked at my profile, you would be able to look at, all the hashtags that had the word like resilience as a competency, and be able to say, oh, okay, I see how or what resilience looks like for Felicia. It's these experiences. It's very, and it actually creates a catalog of skill sets that people have, but the most valid way by showing the behaviors that they've done, which is kind of like behavioral interviewing automation. So I just thought, gosh, what a great way for people to really identify and, bring some context in how people are actually living and breathing these values and these skills. And gosh, what an amazing, amazing like data set that would be.
Right.
I just felt like this would make a difference, whether it was going to work or not work for a client back then. But it's funny, like I said, it's funny that you asked that, because today I've actually seen so much talk around building out a skills taxonomy, which is basically an inventory of skill sets within an organization. And how do people do that? And how do you do that with technology? And so I just thought, gosh, I'm like, this is my jam. I know this. I know this. I've like lived this. And so the concept just really resonates with me. But just to answer your question, like what motivates me is that I know that I have the ability to change people's lives, whether it be now or later, but it is just the good intent that I have. And, I feel like it would have been wonderful for me to have something like that, right? I mean, I have a variety of skill sets that are probably out, very much outside of HR. And I would love for someone to help me maximize my greatest potential. And so I think it's kind of one of the things also that kind of led me outside of, working working full time for another organization, which was because I just had so much more to give. And I was kind of being pigeonholed into this particular role. And I just thought I could do so much more, So I hope to bring that feeling to employees and to leaders where they feel like they can truly maximize a human's potential. And I think we're just scratching the surface in most organizations.
Do you think 2024 is shaping up to be something you're excited about in terms of advancing company culture?
Yeah, I do. I mean, at least I hope so. I mean, I know that the work that we are doing really emphasizes the values and the competencies. I'm starting to see it a lot more in organizations, but I can tell you it is a very difficult thing to do. And a lot of leaders, they don't, and they're not really expected to, given the legacy of how organizations have run in the past, which is like, wake up every day and recite their 5 values that they have in an organization. They're waking up thinking about how they can make money that day to keep everyone employed, and that's so fair. But I do think that we as, recruiters or talent acquisition teams should really push back on organizations that don't have values and competencies in mind during the hiring process and provide our insight and expertise around, the realm of value-based hiring or skills-based hiring. And that really, truly helps organizations keep those top of mind because people think about that, the types of answers they're going to have through the interview process. And if candidates go through your company and they look at your values and you don't ask any values-based questions, they're not going to think that matters. So I think just having like a very stringent process around that, I think is really important. But do I think, the future really brings that like culture-based? I think people are getting smarter. I think Gen Z is going to be interesting. I think that they are likely to be so far the generation with values and global responsibility top of mind. So I'm hopeful, and I hope that the clients that we have will continue to trust us that this is really the strategy that they need to implement, in their businesses. So I'm hoping to be able to impact the clients that we have now and in the future, and hopefully we'll be able to make a dent.
It seems like you already are, and I love everything that you're all about. The mission, that you're heart-centric, that you care about it, that they're not just words. So I really appreciate the work you're doing. Where can people find out more and follow along with your podcast?
Yeah, so CPOplaybook.com is a place where you can find out more about the work that we do and the services we provide. The podcast is there. The podcast is on every distribution, Spotify and Apple and so forth. So we hope that we get more listeners. We have some amazing guests actually in the next year. Next year, we'll be having actually a lot more CEO guests that implement people strategies. So they're going to be in the hot seat soon, which is where we want the conversations to be.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about the future of the show, the services that we're providing our clients, and that would be the best place. And of course, LinkedIn. I'm always talking to everyone on LinkedIn. A lot, so you can reach me there as well.
Felicia, thank you so much. We appreciate you spending some time with us.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a lovely session. Thank you for the challenging questions, and it's been my pleasure.
Now it's time to talk about what we heard. Brett Helgeson, the president of Visory, with us in studio. Brett, so great to see you again.
It's so nice to see you.
We're going to break down Felicia's episode. She had so many incredible things to say. She's such an inspiration. But first, I want to touch on the headlines. Some exciting news going on with Visory.
Yeah. Well, after a long and well-planned process, we ultimately did a merger. And so Visory actually acquired Adopt Technologies, and then we are in the process of merging. So I'm now the president of Visory, and we're a much larger organization that has a national footprint. So we quadrupled in both employee size, actually about 5 times employee size, and then quadrupled in revenue. And we're really excited about it for a lot of reasons. One of the key things is we just wanted to give our team an opportunity. We have a ton of rock stars, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to grow from a professional development perspective at a much more rapid pace than Adopt itself was affording them. And that is already taking place, which is really awesome to see. So I'm excited for that. So there's a lot of opportunity on that front. There is a ton of opportunity for me as well as our other leaders to just kind of grow and mature and evolve. I wanted to really become uncomfortable and continue my learning adventure and get exposed to new things, both with the private equity firm as well as just a larger organization. And now we have much more depth and breadth as well to serve our customers at a higher level. So we're excited on a lot of fronts. Certainly, there's some challenges. It's a great new experience to go through a merger. There's some wins and bumps in the roads, but we're gonna get through it all, and it's gonna be a much stronger Visory when we're through the merger process.
Well, congratulations! And I just love on this podcast, and this is season 2 now, how you've always shared your insights and thoughts about leadership and the importance for you of being a strong, honest, transparent, inspirational leader.
Well, thank you so much. It's leadership is obviously an evolution, and I think the guest that we're going to be speaking about today demonstrates an awful lot of those things through her practice. But one thing that's really unique in this environment for us is leadership in a remote model. Yeah. We have so many team members that are remote, and it's really a new frontier for me to leverage my leadership skills and connect with our team in a way that I haven't done in the past so extensively. I'm really excited on so many fronts. It's been uncomfortable, which is exactly what I wanted. Right? We all know that we evolve through discomfort, and we learn and grow through challenge. And so that's where we are right now, and I'm excited about it.
Well, it's funny that you say that those moments of being uncomfortable propel us to greater heights, because so many of the guests who I've had the good fortune to interview on your podcast here have talked about that, including Felicia. So talk about your takeaways.
When I was listening to Felicia, I was just sitting there thinking to myself, we're literally two peas in a pod. I don't know if you recall, I think it was the first episode, or if not the first, one of the first, when we really talked about Adopt Technologies and my belief in how you lead and how you grow a business and how important the people are to the success of the business in all aspects. And one of the key things that she was talking about was exactly one of the things that I really felt so strongly about. And so I doubled down with her on this, and that is that real important need to have different trains of thought in the room with you based on diverse sets of background, skills, experiences, culture, everything, to help you get to the right and best decision. And then making sure that you're actually leveraging all of those people to make those decisions, right? Never want to be the smartest person in the room. Always want to make sure that we're gaining input from other people and helping solve challenges.
What do you think was that moment? And I could tell you really connected with her interview, but what was that moment where you're like, yes, I'm right there with you?
Yeah, well, that was it. Like, I felt like we were verbatim saying some things just about exactly that, and leveraging all of these varied experiences and people. It's so true. So we're on the same page.
How, as you continue to grow at Visory with so many more employees and people working remotely, how do you continue to try to uphold that culture and bringing, those voices into the room when you're not actually in the room?
Yeah, it's great timing for that question. I actually had a meeting this morning regarding our social group as well as our philanthropy council. And so that was the discussion. How do we end up doing this where we're really able to build relationship, foster teamwork, get to know each other at a high level when you do have employees spread across the country in 28 plus states? And it's not an easy task at all. You can't have the typical functions that you would together in person in one location. It becomes really expensive, obviously, to bring everybody together at one point in time. So whether it be through game nights, question and answer sessions with different leadership, providing team members open forums to really get to know each other and the leaders. And to your point about being open and transparent, really just trying to open the Komodo and give access to all of us as leaders, and then really just get to know people. It's hard. We're looking forward to continuing to evolve on how we do that best.
Yeah.
But we're taking great strides.
Well, I really appreciate being able to host this podcast and raise up voices like Felicia's and so many others who we interview for this Visory Elephant in the Room podcast. Brett, thank you so much for checking in.
We're so grateful that you were the one that's hosting it. And of course, Nick and the team for helping with all the production. Always good to have you in studio. I know you're super busy, but we appreciate you and your commitment to the show and the type of interviews that we're able to bring to light here. So thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for watching Visory Elephant in the Room. I'm Carrie Pena.